COVID came from a lab in Wuhan. That was an assessment the FBI made in 2021. The FBI has scientific experts and expertise since anthrax scares became part of the post-9/11 era. As for COVID-19, what has not been known is how and why the FBI believed that virus came from a lab. We have more insights on that. Katherine Eban has been reporting on the origins of COVID for Vanity Fair for the last few years, and she had an interview with former senior scientists for the FBI's forensic response team. Here to elaborate on this reporting is Katherine Eban herself, a special correspondent at Vanity Fair. Thanks for joining us again, Katherine. Love discussing this subject with you.
Thanks. Great to be back.
So what I found most interesting about your piece this time around is you go into really granular detail about the vast number of bat specimens collected by the Wuhan scientists, and that being likely a motivating reason for the FBI to make this determination, just looking at the sheer amount of specimens they collected, and then their evasiveness, and they change that happened in Wuhan, the changing of labels of like what the virus was called, including ones that kind of resemble COVID. Can you elaborate?
Yeah. So, one of the central questions that the FBI had to tackle is how did a bat coronavirus arrive in Wuhan primed to infect humans? And these are bats. It's a certain type of horseshoe bat that is not native to Wuhan. So how did it get there? So then you have this, large research complex that has one of the largest repositories of virus samples. We know that they were harvesting bat coronavirus samples in southern China, in Yunnan province, and the FBI zeroed in on an abandoned mine shaft in Mozhong County in Yunnan province, where in 2012, 6 miners became gravely ill shoveling out bat guano from that mine shaft. The WIV took samples from that mine shaft, and one of them was called 4991, which proved to be the closest known progenitor, one of them, to SARS-CoV-2. Now, they were doing research with 4991 and a related family of viruses for years. So this is some of the fact pattern that the FBI looked at when they made their moderate confidence assessment.
And then the evasiveness came when questions were asked about that, and that the label for that virus got actually changed. That there seemed to be some desire to hide, to shield, and then what research got published, missing key information about where it actually had come from. That could just be secrecy for secrecy's sake. Sometimes governments operate in that way. We might have expected this level of trying to misguide us from the authoritarian Chinese state, no matter what. But it seems like the FBI said, yeah, this is really, really, really suspicious. Maybe if there's smoke, there is fire.
Right. So there are all kinds of reasons why scientists may not publish information or samples that they have. Maybe it doesn't fit into the kind of research they're doing, but the fact of the matter is they excised information about lineage 4, which is the lineage with 4991 in it, for a Western forward-facing journal. But it was in the thesis that one of Shuzheng Li's researchers and grad students did, which came out in June 2019 before the pandemic. This was a family of viruses. They had thousands of samples from Yunnan province and many from the Mozhong mine. Those were not disclosed until after the pandemic began, and then they were disclosed sort of drip, drip, drip with shifting information that required updating and more detailed information. So, I think it's important to stress that the FBI's assessment, moderate confidence assessment, it isn't proof, but it's a weighing of evidence. And the problem with the natural origin hypothesis is, yes, it is how we've seen coronaviruses typically emerge. Is a natural spillover in animals, but those animals, infected animals, have not been found in this case.
Yes.
So, you have a key piece of information that's missing, and then you have this history of research with a closely aligned family of viruses to SARS-CoV-2.
Yes, and I saw that Ralph Barrick, who you mention in your most recent piece, this is a lead epidemiologist involved in conversations and knowledge of what Wuhan was doing, warned Xi Jinping to do this research in a safer laboratory, and that guidance was not followed. He actually had an opinion piece in the New York Times this week, warning that very similar research is still being done in Wuhan. And you would have thought that while we don't know for sure, and we should be remaining open to any possibilities, frankly, the possibility of this starting in a wet market suggests to me that reforming those practices would be absolutely fine too, and then also reforming the research. Let's just cover both situations honestly from the standpoint of not having diseases arise. The idea that they're still doing this research, and then that the research was being published in a scientific journal, Cell, like no one is concerned that the same thing is going on still. That's crazy to me.
Well, people are concerned for sure, and that op-ed in the New York Times reflects that concern. I should say this, which is I've been now reporting on the question of COVID-19's origins for about 4 years. And in the beginning, it was branded as a conspiracy theory. We're not there at all now. I mean, we have a divided intelligence community. The World Health Organization says that the origin is not known. We need more information from China. So we don't know the answer. But what's clear is that laboratory accidents do happen all the time. And there are differing regulations and different standards from country to country, And so if you have a country and a laboratory that's doing extremely aggressive research and they're doing it in a BSL-2 setting, which doesn't have proper containment protocols for risky research, it is not a crazy question to ask. Could a virus like COVID-19 have come from a laboratory, especially considering the kind of research they were doing there?
Hmm. It is so fascinating to watch this conversation develop. As you know, people branded conspiracy theorists for initially speculating that the origins could be something other than a natural spillover. We were still hoping for disclosure, especially with a new administration coming in. Not that the origins of COVID needs to be politicized whatsoever, but there has been more interest, seemingly, among elected Republicans for really probing this question. I would love to know what made the Energy Department, for instance, make their determination. What I really want to know is if the intelligence communities have anything along the lines of what the Wall Street Journal reported, which is that there were actually 6 scientists at the Wuhan Institute before the initial outbreak at the wet market. That to me would be a very close to a smoking gun if you had actually sick people with a number of them very similar symptoms before the wet market. Is there any suggestion?
Well,
Do we have any suggestion that intelligence knows that and is why their conclusions have been along those lines?
yeah, we do have that. In fact, that's in our story, Robbie, which is that classified intelligence confirms sick researchers.
Mm.
And the question of sick researchers has come up in classified disclosures. Now, of course, you can say it's, cold and flu season in the autumn of 2019, and people
Eh,
get sick all the
I
time.
don't know about
Right?
that.
Well, I
Yeah,
mean,
sure.
what were they sick with? I don't think that is known, but the fact that they were sick and that they were Shi Zhengli's researchers and graduate students, I believe, is confirmed by classified intelligence. I should say that 2 of the scientists involved have publicly denied that, but there is intelligence which confirms it. But, the question of what they were sick with, I don't know that that is confirmed. And of course, COVID symptoms can be anything from no symptoms at all and asymptomatic to death. So there is a wide range. But there are, I also actually want to add that the intelligence agencies are divided, but the ones that have
Yes, I would like
assessed
to say.
a lab origin may have done so for slightly different reasons. We now know, as we've reported, that the FBI was focused on work being done at BSL-2 laboratories. From the New York Times is reporting on the CIA's shift in assessment towards a lab leak. They're focused on the high containment laboratory at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Other reporting has pointed that the Department of Energy is interested in the Wuhan CDC, which relocated, I believe it was in December 2019, and was across the street from the Wuhan market where we first saw the virus explode. So there is a lot that we still don't know.
Katherine, thank you so much. So much of what you said is so depressing about what happened in the past, but in a way, even more depressing about what could possibly happen in the future. You made some comment about nobody's doing anything. In the proper functioning of the U.S. government, under whose purview would this be handled and really taken care of going forward?
Well, that's a great question. So the Biden administration created something called OPPR, the Office of Pandemic Preparedness and Response. That is an office now that is within the White House. There is discussion about whether that is going to be allied with that function in the National Security Council. So it's not clear exactly what the structure is going to be. But, I should add, we have a bird flu outbreak of incredible severity, which is largely going unchecked. I did a big story about that for Vanity Fair. And that has pandemic potential.
And that is
So, and we're at a moment where the Trump administration has announced its intention to withdraw from the World Health Organization. It has sort of severed a crucial communication link between the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the WHO. So, there is a very tenuous feeling right now from people who are tracking infectious diseases closely. There's a sense that we are not really manning up to meet this moment. We still don't have the answer to what caused the last pandemic, and we're potentially facing another one.
According to your research, how damaging do you think it is that we are cutting ourselves off from the World Health Organization, that we are diminishing, in fact, in many cases, even scrapping all medical research and medical care to make sure that the bird flu doesn't affect us and so forth? How bad do you think this is? How worried do you think we should all be?
I think it's incredibly serious. We're essentially opting to have less information and to not have a seat at the table. My sources told me that at the last WHO meeting, the US was participating in listening only mode and only sent 2 people, and China rushed to fill the void and sent dozens of people. So, you have an international body that is like first eyes and ears. You cannot fight viruses alone in isolation from the rest of the world, because viruses don't care, about who's in a treaty or not. They don't care where a border ends. It is really needs to be an international pursuit to protect the world. So I think it's extremely short-sighted.
Katherine Eban, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks. Great to be on.
Next up, a prominent influencer was banned from his primary platform. We will discuss.